Focus on Headline. And let's take a look at what major issues are making the headlines today on Focus on Headline. For this, joining us in the studio today, we have our reporters in Handan and Arirang. Guys, welcome back.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Big story, obviously, in the past week or so is the talks between North Korean leader Kim Jong-un and Russian President Vladimir Putin. They did end up meeting today, a very rare summit today at the Russian Space Center, as the world is closely watching the talks between these two leaders. Kim vowed to fight with Russia against imperialism, while Putin said that they'll be discussing a wide range of issues if they have enough time. Tan, you're going to start us off with the top headlines here. The two leaders meeting over in Russia. What's the latest here?
Right. So after days of speculation on whether the two leaders will actually meet and where, the two stood face to face today for the highly anticipated summit in Russia. Kim and Putin began talks at the Vostochny Space Center in Russia's Far East Amur region after they shook hands and greeted each other for their first meeting in more than 4 years. Kim said that Russia was waging a crusade against the West and pledged to join in the fight against imperialism, adding that he is supportive of all decisions made by President Putin in an apparent reference to Moscow's invasion of Ukraine. He added that North Korea's friendship with Russia has deep roots, and now its first priority is relations with the Russian Federation. He went on to say that Russia has now risen to defend its state sovereignty and defend its security to counter the hegemonic forces that oppose Russia, echoing the Kremlin's propaganda that's used to justify its aggression in Ukraine. President Putin, meanwhile, thanked Kim for accepting his invitation, highlighting that their talks were materialized, marking the 75th anniversary of Pyongyang-Moscow diplomatic ties. Emphasizing that their summit comes at a special time, he said he will discuss a wide range of issues with Kim, from economic cooperation to regional affairs surrounding the Korean Peninsula. Putin also said that he's happy to hold the meeting at the Vostochny Cosmodrome, adding that he's very proud of the development of Russia's space industry. The Russian leader gave Kim a tour around the Space Center's main facilities, presenting Russia's key space technology. Kim's visit comes as Russia is seeking to buy artillery ammunition from North Korea for its invasion of Ukraine, where Russia is estimated to have used between 10 or 11 million rounds over the past 18 months in its grinding full-scale invasion, according to Reuters. Asked whether military cooperation was on the agenda, Putin said he'll talk about all the issues slowly with Kim because there is enough time. And Putin made no secret of their possible arms deal, being accompanied by Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu and Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov for the negotiations. Putin said that Russia would help North Korea build space satellites, according to local news outlets. He told reporters that that's why the two met at the Space Center, because Kim shows great interest in rocket technology, because North Korea is trying to develop space. The Kremlin says Kim and Putin will not sign any documents, but may discuss sensitive areas, and that includes military interaction. President Putin is set to hold an official dinner for Kim Jong-un, and the two are also likely to visit the Komsomolsk Namure, a city rich with weapons industry, which I will have more details in my later story. So it's widely speculated that North Korea will provide artillery to Russia that it desperately needs in its prolonged war against Ukraine, while North Korea will get Russia's advanced space technology, which the Kim Jong-un regime also desperately needs for further development of its missile program, which the regime firmly believes is vital to regime's survival. And most experts also point out that through this summit, Pyongyang will also likely depend more on Moscow rather than Beijing to ease its economic hardships coming from the many years of stifling sanctions. And so it's a perfect win-win for both countries. Some are calling it the dangerous bromance, while others are calling it the marriage of convenience. But regardless of the terms, it's a perfect win-win for both of them, and which adds another grave threat, not just to the Indo-Pacific region, but to the entire world.
Yeah, I think it's honestly the potential arms deal is probably the worst kept secret right now. And I think they're still being relatively ambiguous with the idea, though, again, Kim Jong-un coming out saying that they're going to be joining in on the fight in the imperialism. That doesn't mean that North Korea is going to be sending troops, right? I mean, because they know what would happen if they start sending troops. I mean, it's World War. But what they can do is provide them with weapons or ammunitions and rockets and so forth. But you look at the delegation that traveled with Kim Jong-un to Russia. Number one, it's bigger in number compared to 4 years ago. You had some military officials that are some of the top military officials that are traveling, hence going in with the whole speculation that there's going to be some sort of arms deal. There was certain officials in the field of science, and of course the meeting being taking place at a space center, and North Korea having failed two military military reconnaissance satellite launches this past year. They're obviously going to now seek the help of Russia because they have an upcoming launch come next month in October, and so it's the worst kept secret. And I think the Kremlin also came out saying that there's not going to be any kind of joint press conference or anything like that. There's not going to be any joint statement that's going to be issued, because the consensus right now is that the two leaders aren't going to tell the world that there is going to be this arms deal in place. And I think, Tan, you made a very good point in that there's less reliance on China right now, because China is going, dude, we can't afford to get any more sanctions. We're trying to survive this right now. Whereas Russia and North Korea, they're like, I mean, we've already got like all these sanctions on us.
Right. Things are a little different for China.
Yeah. And China, although they say in word that they're going to help out, when it comes to any sort of military issues, they've just been hands off. And I think even Russia has reached out to China before in trying to get ammunitions and weapons and so forth. But China's like, I don't know about that. I mean, we're already as isolated as it is right now. I don't think, providing you guys weapons will help anymore. But going to this meeting again over in Russia's Vostochny Cosmodrome Space Center today, they were originally speculated to be meeting in Vladivostok, right? I mean, that's what we were saying. But of course, they did decide to have this summit in a very remote Siberian space center. Anna, tell us more about Kim Jong-un's journey to Russia's Far East, because considering the speed of that armored truck, I mean, it's a long trip we're looking at there.
Sure. As Dan already elaborated in detail, according to Russia's news outlet, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un and Russian President Vladimir Putin have met at Russia's Vostochny Space Center this afternoon ahead of their one-on-one meeting, which was just finished. Earlier, North Korean state media KCNA confirmed that Kim had arrived in the Russian border city of Kasan on Tuesday morning and had left for his destination without specifying details. It remained unknown until this morning exactly when and where Kim and Putin would hold a meeting, though some foreign media reports said the summit would likely take place at Vostochny Cosmodrome in Russia's Amur region. Initially, it was widely speculated that Kim would travel to Vladivostok to meet Putin, as he previously did in 2019. However, on Tuesday afternoon, Kim Jong-un's private train began changing its direction and moving northward near Ussurisk. Instead of heading south to reach Vladivostok, it changed its path in the opposite direction. And several hours later, President Vladimir Putin announced his plan to visit Vostochny Cosmodrome while he's at the Eastern Economic Forum, although he didn't mention Kim Jong-un when talking about such plans. Vostochny Cosmodrome is 2,300 kilometers away from Pyongyang, and due to North Korea's poor railroad conditions and the heavy weight of the armored train system, Kim's private train traveled at a speed of approximately 37 miles per hour. So Kim traveled for nearly 3 days by train to meet with Putin. Kim previously chose a 60-hour train ride over a 3-hour air journey for his second summit with then U.S. President Donald Trump in Hanoi, Vietnam. Some experts say that a train ride allows Kim to command his country from anywhere, receiving all reports because all kinds of communication facilities are available in trains. Others say that it is how his grandfather, the founding father of North Korea, Kim Il-sung, used to travel for his overseas trips. Kim is often seen to replicate his grandfather to reinforce the idea that he is a successor of the Kim regime.
We had a chance to talk to Professor Brian Myers just yesterday in breaking down this visit to Russia. And one of the things that he said was, I mean, sure, yes, there is quite a bit of symbolism in using this train, and especially his father, Kim Jong-un, who was known to be deathly afraid of flying, just travel to train on just about everywhere. But the thing is, it's, for Kim Jong-un, it's a little bit different. But they're saying that when they were traveling, when Kim Jong-un traveled to Singapore, right, because he flew before, I think he was provided with an airplane by the Chinese government at the time. And because North Korea, what is he going to ride? The Korea Air? He's not going to ride the Korea. That's the worst airline in the world. There is no plane that he can get on. And also for security issues and so forth, he has, of course, opted to take on this train. But I mean, 60 hours, that's too long there. Anyways, we all thought again that this summit would take place in Vladivostok, where the Eastern Economic Forum was being held. I believe it concluded just today. But again, with Kim and Putin meeting at the Vostochny Space Center in Russia's Far East, you're looking at a very, very long travel up north from Vladivostok to get there. 1,000 kilometers further up north is what you're looking at. Nevertheless, Tan, let's talk about, we did briefly talk about why they probably chose this venue, but let's also talk more on the significance of the summit venue.
Sure, like we've previously mentioned, it's a highly symbolic place that boasts Russia's space power, one of the strongest in the world. The Vostochny Space Center was built with an aim to reduce Russia's dependency on the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan. It's a modern and state-of-the-art facility that began full-scale operation in April 2016 with the launch of the center's first satellite. Vostochny features multiple launch pads, assembly and integration buildings, and infrastructure to support various types of rockets, including the Soyuz and Angara rocket families. The site is equipped to handle both crewed and uncrewed missions. So obviously for North Korea, the Space Center is like a treasure trove that possesses stacks of satellite and rocket launch technology desperately sought by the Kim Jong-un regime. Needless to say, like you briefly mentioned, SJ, Pyongyang has failed its first two attempts to launch the state's first military surveillance satellite, and so it's in desperate need of advanced rocket launch technology that will help put its spy satellite into orbit in its third attempt. And please excuse my pronunciation, not really good at Russian, Komsomolsk-na-Amur, which the two leaders are widely expected to visit during Kim's trip to Russia, is also a highly symbolic place. It's a city with a burgeoning weapons industry, with steel manufacturing, oil refining, and shipbuilding also thriving in the region. It's a home to a shipyard that builds submarines, as well as factories that manufactures Russia's Sukhoi fighter jets and fifth-generation multi-purpose combat aircrafts. So a stop at the city would clearly align with the main purpose of Kim's visit to Russia, to expand military cooperation and discuss the details of their arms deals. North Korea's Air Force Commander Kim Kwang-hyuk and Navy Commander Kim Myung-sik also accompanied Kim to Russia for a tour around the city and its weapons manufacturing lines. Kim Jong-un, as you know, is now very much focused on bolstering North Korea's naval power lately, unveiling what it claimed to be a tactical nuclear attack submarine. Top North Korea experts say the logical next step for North Korea would be a missile launch from the submarine to demonstrate to the world that the vessel is, in fact, operational. Kim's late father and former North Korean leader Kim Jong-il had also visited Komsomolsk-na-Amur in 2001 and 2, taking a tour around the fighter jet factories and the shipyards. So as we get a clearer picture of the two countries' military cooperation, concerns are mounting, especially for the Western nations and South Korea.
Yeah, so initially when we heard about this speculation that North Korea and Russia are going to work on some sort of arms deal, right? I think initially what they were saying is that, well, if North Korea provides Russia with some ammunition and maybe some rockets, that in exchange, North Korea would get some cash, was what it was, right? But now it just seems like they're probably going to get something else in return. And the other thing that they're going to get return is satellite technology is going to be number one, right? Because previously, before South Korea started domesticating rockets and the space program, they also got a whole lot of help from Russia before all this. And so the big question is, when they've already announced the fact that they're going to be launching their third military spy satellite in October, like, is that enough time, right? I think a lot of experts were saying, what are they doing? They failed twice already. I don't think they'll be able to be ready for the third one in October. So he's in a rush right now. The other thing is, when North Korea unveiled their tactical nuclear attack submarine, South Korea came out right off the bat and said, I think they're exaggerating their technology. Right. It's probably not what it is, because North Korea has a track record of kind of exaggerating their military power. And so now Kim Jong-un has to prove that what he has is, in fact, what he said he has. And now he's going to get a whole lot of help from Russia at this time. And, Kim Jong-un, I think, like you said, I mean, he has been trying to use submarines as a source of, shooting missiles and so forth, the SLBM test that we've seen before. And that's because it's just so much harder to track these SLBM launches rather than from launchers or in land launchers as well. In the meantime, U.S. Undersecretary of Defense Sasha Baker and U.S. Deputy Secretary of Commerce Don Graves, they're going to be visiting South Korea this week and next week, respectively, to discuss potential response measures in line of the arms deal between North Korea and Russia. Arirang, let's get more on this.
Sure. Ranking U.S. officials from the Departments of Defense and Commerce will soon travel to South Korea for talks on ways to enhance the country's joint deterrence against North Korea's evolving nuclear threats. According to the Defense Department, acting Under Secretary of Defense for Policy, Sasha Baker will visit South Korea later this week for the fourth meeting of the Extended Deterrence Strategy and Consultation Group. The Defense Department said in a press release that Sasha would meet South Korean government and military leaders to discuss the current security environment and underscores the U.S. commitment to defense of South Korea. Also, Deputy Secretary of Commerce Don Graves said he would too travel to South Korea next week as part of a two-nation trip that will also take him to Japan. In a forum hosted by South Korea's state-run Korea Trade Investment Promotion Agency, KOTRA, in Washington, D.C. on September 12th local time, Graves said he would discuss ways to strengthen export controls currently in place against Russia that are designed to curb shipments of equipment and materials to Russia that can be used in Russia's ongoing war against Ukraine. The visit by the senior U.S. official comes as North Korean leader Kim Jong-un and Russian President Vladimir Putin are meeting in Russia now to discuss an arms deal. During Deputy Secretary's visit, Seoul and Washington are likely to discuss how to respond if the North decides to provide dual-use items to Russia. Dual-use items are items that can be used for both civilian and military applications. In the forum, Graves also underscored the importance of preventing countries that pose threats to national security and violate human rights from obtaining weapons and technology that could be used to deny freedom and threaten neighboring countries in reference to China and North Korea.
Now, we also saw Washington doubling down that it won't hesitate to take necessary action should North Korea do, in fact, go with providing weapons to Russia, reiterating that the North will, quote, pay a price. Let's get more on this.
The remarks were made by a State Department spokesperson, Matthew Miller, who said the United States will not hesitate in taking any necessary action should North Korea agree to provide weapons to Russia. He stressed that any arms transfer from North Korea to Russia would violate multiple UN Security Council resolutions. He added that Washington will closely monitor what happens and will take action to hold those accountable and impose sanctions if necessary, as the U.S. has aggressively enforced sanctions against any entity or country that supports Russia's war. When asked if Russia could unilaterally lift UN Security Council sanctions on North Korea, he replied, "No, Russia cannot take unilateral actions related to the UN Security Council." The question followed Russian officials' remarks that were cited in some reports that Russia may be willing to discuss lifting of sanctions currently imposed on North Korea with Pyongyang if necessary. Meanwhile, Pentagon spokesperson Patrick Ryder echoed Miller's claims and called on Pyongyang not to provide weapons to Russia, noting that a Kim-Putin meeting will likely focus on arms negotiations. He urged Pyongyang to meet its previously stated public commitments not to supply weapons to Russia, which will only end up prolonging the unnecessary war in Ukraine.
Yeah, the only problem with this, again, I mean, this is... I've lost count on how many times Washington has come out saying that there's going to be some sort of, response, strong measures against North Korea and Russia, or they'll pay a price. And what they basically mean is there's going to be sanctions in place, right? But I mean, it's been Oprah, right? It's like you get a sanction. There's been sanctions left and right for Russia and North Korea right now. And although Russia has been impacted very heavily with these sanctions, and one of the things that we've seen was the fact that they're not able to get these ammunition because of these sanctions, North Korea is the weird one in that group, right? Like North Korea's been getting sanctioned since forever, and they've found loopholes is the thing. And sure, it does impact the people inside North Korea, but it doesn't, really affect the high-ranking officials or anyone like that. They keep, sanctioning these hackers. I don't know what it exactly does, to be honest with you, but it's probably going to keep Russia and North Korea even tighter. And Russia's probably going, you know what? We've lost everything. There's nothing to lose. We're just going to side with North Korea even more and try to get whatever we can out of this. But it is interesting that when the Kremlin said they're thinking about lifting these UNSC resolutions against North Korea, because I didn't think it was possible neither. But who knows? But also before, speaking of which, it's things like this that got some of the UNSC permanent members to think about whether or not they should remove Russia from permanent membership. But I think they came out saying that that's not fair. But nevertheless, let's talk about the Pentagon this time, because the Pentagon on Tuesday released an unclassified summary of its 2023 cyber strategy. This is the first update since 2018, and the strategy stated that the 2023 strategy is based on real-world experiences and has been informed by Russia's war on Ukraine, which has seen a significant use of cyber capabilities. Tough words here. Arirang, what exactly are the details of this updated cyber strategy?
The U.S. Department of Defense has released a summary of Cyber Strategy 2023 aimed at countering cybersecurity threats from countries such as China, Russia, and North Korea. The strategy includes expanding DoD's cyber workforce and strengthening its international alliances to meet the goals. The plan draws from lessons learned in Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and it seeks to maintain an edge against China. The new strategy begins with the statement, quote unquote, cyberspace operations represent an indispensable element of U.S. and allied military strength and form a core component of integrated deterrence. It said that the United States is challenged by malicious cyber actors who seek to exploit its technological vulnerabilities and undermine its military's competitive edge. And it said that defending against and defeating these cyber threats is a DoD's imperative. It pinpointed that North Korea, Iran, and violent extremist organizations remain persistent threats to the United States. As for North Korea, it said the country pursues a range of espionage and criminal objectives in cyberspace, and it has undertaken significant malicious cyber activity related to ransomware and the compromise of cryptocurrency wallets. It stressed that the U.S. interests in cyberspace are also threatened by profit-motivated transnational criminal organizations, namely ransomware gangs, hacktivists, and state-sponsored cyber mercenaries. And Russia, Iran, and North Korea all provide safe havens to ransomware gangs, and their own state employees are involved in cybercrime. According to the strategy, China poses a broad and pervasive cyber espionage threat, routinely conducting malicious cyber activity against the United States, as well as its allies and partners. Also, Russia has repeatedly used cyber means in its attempt to disrupt Ukrainian military logistics and sabotage civilian infrastructure. The strategy went on to say that Russia is prepared to launch similar cyber attacks against the United States and its allies. The strategy concluded by saying, quote unquote, "We will bolster the cyber capability and capacity of our allies and partners and reinforce the norms of responsible behavior in cyberspace. Throughout it all, we will build enduring advantages in the cyber domain."
Moving on here, we have North Korea's missile provocation continuing, and notice that usually previously in some other years, when North Korea fires missiles, it's usually the top story, but they fire so much that it's not even the top story anymore. This is happening despite the fact that Kim Jong-un, again, is traveling overseas. You're looking at now 2 short-range ballistic missiles being launched from its capital, Pyongyang, and this was just an hour before Kim was due to hold a summit with Vladimir Putin. So, Don, let's get the latest details on this North Korea's provocation.
Well, you're right. The missile launch came between 11:43 a.m. and 11:53 a.m. today, which was just about an hour before Kim and Putin were set to hold their rare summit. According to South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff, North Korea fired 2 short-range ballistic missiles into the East Sea from around the Sunan area in Pyongyang. The missiles flew some 650 kilometers before splashing into the waters. The launch comes 14 days after the North fired 2 short-range ballistic missiles on August 30th. The South Korean military strongly condemned the latest launches as significant acts of provocation that violate the UN Security Council resolutions banning the North from launches using ballistic missile technology. It said it's closely monitoring activities and signs from the country in close coordination with the U.S. The launches marked the first time the North has fired a ballistic missile while the state's leader is outside of the country, according to Seoul's Unification Ministry. And top North Korea experts analyzed that this is North Korea's way of showing confidence that it strictly maintains its military preparedness even when its supreme leader is away. Some experts also say that the launch is an expression of discontent towards Seoul and Washington that have been sending strong warnings against Pyongyang to stop military cooperation with Russia. South Korea's top office urged Russia to act responsibly as a permanent member of the UN Security Council today, while the U.S. State Department doubled down it won't hesitate to slap additional sanctions on the North. And State Department spokesperson Matthew Miller also made some very strong remarks towards Moscow that having to travel across the length of his own country to meet with an international pariah to ask for assistance in a war, which he expected to win in the opening month, could be characterized as begging for assistance.
Well, I mean, on the flip side, it also does seem like Kim Jong-un may be begging for assistance as well. I mean, this guy traveled 3 days on a train that goes 37 miles per hour. So again, we're going to continue to get these sort of remarks from Washington, but the big question is, what afterwards? I mean, what tangible results are we going to see from all these, criticism from Washington and Seoul? Nevertheless, let's move on to some domestic politics news. President Yoon Suk-yeol carried out yet another cabinet reshuffle following his first reshuffle back in June, this time replacing the ministers of defense, culture, and gender equality. Anan, tell us about the people named for those positions.
Sure. President Yoon Suk-yeol carried out a partial cabinet reshuffle today to name the new ministers of defense, culture, and gender equality. The nominations were supposed to be announced by Presidential Chief of Staff Kim Dae-gi this morning, but it was pushed back to this afternoon. Former Representative Shin Won-sik of the ruling People Power Party and the retired three-star Army general replaces Defense Minister Lee Jong-sop, who reportedly resigned recently. Lee said in an interview that he was stepping down to avoid a vacuum in national security amid the main opposition Democratic Party's push to impeach him over alleged unlawful intervention in an investigation related to the death of a Marine during the search for victims of heavy rain in July. Under the National Assembly Act, if an impeachment motion against a minister passes through the National Assembly, the minister's duties are suspended and he or she cannot resign or be dismissed until the Constitutional Court delivers its verdict on the impeachment. And this can possibly create a vacuum in national security in terms of Ministry of Defense. Yoo In-chon, former actor and the special presidential advisor for culture and sports, was named the new culture minister. He previously held the same position during the Lee Myung-bak administration. Kim Haing, who was a member of the PPP Interim Leadership Committee, is tapped for the new Minister of Gender Equality and Family. She also was a spokesperson for the Park Geun-hye administration. The outgoing Gender Equality Minister Kim Hyun-suk came under fire for the mismanagement of the 25th World Scout Jamboree, saying that the responsibility should fall on the local government that hosted the event, even though she was a co-chair of the organizing committee.
Yeah, I do wonder how the investigation into who was responsible for the World Scout Jamborees falling apart is, but we're not getting too much on that. In the meantime, opposition leader Lee Jae-myung grilled by prosecutors again on Tuesday. This, of course, on the charges of third-party bribery involving the Sangbangul group, which apparently sent $8 million over to North Korea in an illicit remittance case. We had 5 hours of questioning, adamantly denying all charges, saying that the Yoon administration failed to put forth a single piece of evidence to prove him guilty. Talon, fill us in on this.
Right. Democratic Party Chief Lee Jae-myung was summoned yet again by prosecutors on Tuesday for questioning over allegations of his involvement in a company's illegal remittance to North Korea. The questioning came 3 days after he underwent the first round of questioning over the weekend. And as he left the Sunan District Prosecutor's office after around 5 hours of questioning on charges of third-party bribery, he told reporters that he doesn't understand why prosecutors called him in again when they can't put forth even a single piece of evidence to prove him guilty. He accused the prosecution that it's trying to fabricate a crime he did not commit, saying prosecutors appear to be having a hard time to link him with a crime that he wasn't involved in. Lee squarely rejected all allegations against him, saying that he's not foolish enough to commit such a grave crime of getting a corrupt businessman to pay an exorbitant amount of money to North Korea for him when he was a provincial governor. Lee is accused of ordering underwear maker Sangbangul to illegally transfer over $8 million to North Korea to support a smart farm project in the north and ultimately materialize his visit to Pyongyang in 2019 when he was serving as the governor of Gyeonggi province. Prosecutors suspect that of the total remittance, $5 million was earmarked for Gyeonggi province's smart farm support program in North Korea, while the remaining $3 million was what the north had demanded as the cost of facilitating Lee's visit to Pyongyang. Lee had entered the 13th day of his fast that he launched in protest against what he called the incompetent and violent government of President Yoon, and the prosecution says it has drastically reduced the questioning time considering Lee's health conditions. Lee, meanwhile, moved the site of his hunger strike indoors today from a tent in front of the National Assembly to inside his office due to his worsening health. Lee's carrying on with the strike, calling it the last resort to stop the incompetence of the Yoon administration.
Let's finish things off and talk about a number of natural disasters that's happening in the African continent. You first have the death toll from Morocco's deadliest earthquake in the center of the country, in that region, nearing 3,000. The search and recovery, however you may put it, is still continuing. You also have the tally from the devastating floods in Libya that's rose to 5,300 people there. Let's get the latest updates on the death tolls in both countries. Anan, you have more on this.
Sure. Officials in eastern Libya today have retrieved the bodies of more than 1,000 victims from the rubble in Libya's coastal city of Derna that has been inundated by devastating floods. An Interior Ministry spokesperson says the death toll had exceeded 5,300 in Derna alone from the flooding caused by Mediterranean storm Daniel. Libya envoy for the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies, IFRC, Tamer Ramadan, previously said 10,000 people were missing after the unprecedented flooding. He said the death toll was huge and thousands of more death toll is expected in the coming days. IFRC's chief, Jagan Chapagain, said that the 3 IFRC volunteers died while helping victims of the flooding. The health minister in Libya's eastern government, Othman Abdul Jalil, said the bodies were still lying underground in many parts. Hospitals were filled with bodies and there were areas they have yet to reach, which means the tally is only likely to rise in the coming days. Also in Morocco, according to the Moroccan Interior Ministry, the death toll from the country's devastating earthquake has reached at least 2,901. The number of people injured was updated to at least 5,530. The ministry said that 2,884 of the people who were killed have been buried. It said efforts to rescue any potential survivors were still underway, while the injured would continue receiving appropriate care.
Once again, our thoughts are with the people of both Libya and Morocco. And of course, for all of our listeners out there, we'll keep you guys posted on the situation over there. In the meantime, guys, thank you very much for your reports today. Have a safe one, and we'll see you guys again.
Thank you.
You can listen to Korea Now with me, SJ Lee, by downloading the Arirang radio application or tune in online by visiting www.arirangradio.com. So make sure you tune in Mondays through Fridays, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Korea time.